Love builds, love produces, hate destroys. If you're looking to build a legacy of love, really, right? The ripples, they go on. It does not stop. A legacy of hate is nothing. If you want to build something, you have to love. If you want your life to matter, you have to love. Hate. God, what's wrong with people? Since the philosophy of nonviolence played such a positive role in the Montgomery movement, it may be wise to turn to a brief discussion of some basic aspects of this philosophy. First, it must be emphasized that nonviolent resistance is not a method for cowards. It does resist. If one uses this method because he is afraid, or merely because he lacks the instruments of violence, he is not truly nonviolent. This is why Gandhi often said that if cowardice is the only alternative to violence, it is better to fight. He made the statement conscious of the fact that there is always another alternative. No individual or group need submit to any wrong, nor need they use violence to right the wrong. There is the way of nonviolence resistance. This is ultimately the way of the strong man. It is not a method of stagnant passivity. The phrase passive resistance often gives the false impression that this is a sort of do-nothing method in which the resistor quietly and passively accepts evil. But nothing is further from the truth. For while the nonviolent resistor is passive in the sense that he is not physically aggressive toward his opponent, his mind and emotions are always active, constantly seeking to persuade his opponent that he is wrong. The method is passive physically, but strongly active spiritually. It is not passive non-resistance to evil. It is active non-violent resistance to evil. A second basic fact that characterizes nonviolence is that it does not seek to defeat or humiliate the opponent, but to win his friendship and understanding. The nonviolent... Let's make a distinction between the rulers, the manipulators, and the people supporting, okay? The nonviolent resistor must often express his protest through non-cooperation or boycotts, but he realizes that these are not ends themselves. They are merely means to awaken a sense of moral shame in the opponent. The end is redemption and reconciliation. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community, while the aftermath of violence is tragic bitterness. We don't throw pearls before swine, of course, right? There's some people that there's no point trying to reconcile with, but that's not the base. Maybe. How safe are you? A third characteristic of this method is that the attack is directed against forces of evil, right? No pearls before swine. Forces of evil, rather than against persons who happen to be doing the evil. It is evil that the nonviolent resistor seeks to defeat, not the persons victimized by evil. If he is opposing racial injustice, the nonviolent resistor has the vision to see that the basic tension is not between races. As I like to say to the people in Montgomery, the tension in this city is not between white people and Negro people. The tension is at bottom between justice and injustice, between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And if there is a victory, it will be a victory not merely for 50,000 Negroes, but a victory for justice and the forces of light. We are out to defeat injustice and not white persons who may be unjust. A fourth point that characterizes nonviolent resistance is a willingness to accept suffering without retaliation, to accept blows from the opponent without striking back. Rivers of blood may have to flow before we gain our freedom, but it must be our blood, Gandhi said to his countrymen. The nonviolent resistor is willing to accept violence if necessary, but never to inflict it. He does not seek to dodge jail. If going to jail is necessary, he enters it as a bridegroom enters the bride's chamber. One may well ask, what is the nonviolent resistor's justification for this ordeal to which he invites men? For this mass political application of the ancient doctrine of turning the other cheek? The answer is found in the realization that unearned suffering is redemptive. Unearned suffering is redemptive. Suffering, the nonviolent resistor realizes, has tremendous educational and transforming possibilities. Things, Gandhi says, things of fundamental importance to people are not secured by reason alone, but have to be purchased with their suffering, said Gandhi. He continues, suffering is infinitely more powerful than the law of the jungle for converting the opponent and opening his ears, which are otherwise shut to the voice of reason. Okay, this is a big ask. Put yourself in harm's way. Put yourself in harm's way. Put yourself in a position to be treated unjustly. You're being treated unjustly already. Make it visible. Put yourself in a position to be publicly treated unjustly. The hope is that when people see the suffering, or even when people produce the suffering, that it spreads compassion and shame. Shame in what you are supporting. Shame in what you are producing. Shame in the status quo. It's a big ask for people to subject themselves to more suffering. A fifth point concerning nonviolent resistance is that it avoids not only physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. The nonviolent resistor not only refuses to shoot his opponent, but he also refuses to hate him. At the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. The nonviolent resistor would contend that in the struggle for human dignity, the oppressed people of the world must not succumb to the temptation of becoming bitter or indulging in hate campaigns. To retaliate in kind would do nothing but intensify the existence of hate in the universe. Along the way of life, someone must have enough sense enough, and morality enough to cut off the chain of hate. This can only be done by projecting the ethic of love to the center of our lives. And speaking of love at this point, we are not referring to some sentimental or affectionate emotion, but a disinterested love. Let me skip forward. Agape. It's important stuff. In the final analysis, agape means a recognition of the fact that all life is interrelated. All humanity is involved in a single process, and all men are brothers. To the degree that I harm my brother, no matter what he is doing to me, to that extent I am harming myself. For example, white men often refuse federal aid to education in order to avoid giving the Negro his rights. But because all men are brothers, they cannot deny Negro children without harming their own. They end all efforts to the contrary by hurting themselves. Why is this? Because men are brothers. If you harm me, you harm yourself. And here from Hesiod, he harms himself who harms his fellow man. The plotter is the worst hurt by the plan. If you harm me, you harm yourself. A sixth basic fact is that the universe is on the side of justice. The ripples of love continue. The ripples of love continue, and hate destroys and does not last. Maybe there's faith involved in this. I don't know.